is dedicated.
We hope that the junkies appreciate this last minute episode. This is going to be the last episode for a few months, so we're making this a special one. We wanted to pay homage to another fallen brother in this underground rap scene. We're here to pay tribute to the man, the myth, the legend, Ramon Corona, known to the world as Knightowl. Unfortunately, he left this earth on February 11th, 2022. Leaving behind a legacy and the mark in the West Coast hip-hop, especially the underground, not to mention the plethora of work he released across his 3 decades as a professionally recording artist. Now, my boy 619DE actually knew Knightowl on a personal level. Six, if you don't mind sharing with your listeners how you actually crossed paths with Knightowl, take it away.
How I met Ramon, Mr. Knightowl, Al, the Bird, whatever you want to call him. When I met Ray, probably the year 2001, I was probably 15. Word has already gone around that, that Knightowl's parents lived, not too far from my parents' house. He was driving on the boulevard, and I was probably walking home from school. I remember the day was hot. He drove past by on the boulevard, and I just yelled out, "Yo, Knightowl!" He greets me, and I asked a couple questions, and then after that, he blessed me with the Knightowl, the Bald-Headed Kingpin album.
Nice.
So he blessed me with that CD. If I remember, the only CD I probably owned by that time was, I want to say, it was Nightmares. And then from there, we kept the relationship going, and that's how I met y'all.
And that's fucking crazy, dog. 2001-ish. So it's been like,
let's go with 2001. Yeah.
Damn. So it's been like 20 years that you known him.
Yeah.
That's crazy, bro. So you were actually a fan before you became like a family friend, right?
Correct.
That's cool, bro.
I would like to hear how how Knightowl came into your.
What's funny is that I actually remember hearing his name for the first time in high school. So I think I was a freshman, and I was sitting next to this girl in my science class, and I had something rap related on my folder, and out of nowhere, she started asking me questions about like Chicano rappers. So she's like, "Hey, do you listen to Shadow?" I was like, "Yeah, he's cool." And then she started mentioning other names that I wasn't familiar with because I hadn't actually heard their music. I just heard of them. She goes, "What about Little One?" I'm like, "Yeah, him too. He's cool, I guess." And then she goes, "Knightowl?" I'm like, "Sure, he's cool." But I hadn't heard his music yet. And then I think like a few years later, I started downloading music through like Napster and fucking
LimeWire.
That LimeWire was a big one there. I remember I was kicking it with my homie out in Temecula, and we had this friend come over, and he's like, "Hey dog, check this out. I just got these 2 CDs, and the first one was Shadows Till I Die, and the second one was the Knightowl." And he started playing a few tracks. He's like, "Yo, check out this track. Like, this is a trip." And he starts playing a few songs from them, and I remember how Come Get Some of This caught me off guard, dog. Like,
motherfucking rebel rap demon. I've been convicted, your bitch, I'll be elected, and still not a motherfucker ever disrespected. Get some of this, baby.
The instrumental was vicious. His fucking delivery was like off the top. Like, it almost reminded me of like a little bit of Be Real, like the way the nasally sound that he made on that song.
Yeah.
So that, that's how I kind of started appreciating his music little by little and shit. And that's how his music came into my life. I think it was like New Year's 2009 or something. We were at some party, and the next day we went to go fill up gas because we were headed back down to San Diego. And I kid you not, my homie comes out of the car. He's like, "Hey dog, I think I just saw Knightowl at AM/PM. Like, go in the store and let me know if it's him." And I walked past by him, and I think he knew that like I recognized him, and he just chopped up a conversation with me, and he's like, "Hey man, like, what are you doing over here? Just picking up something for my girl." And he starts giving me advice. He's like, "Hey man, if you got a good woman with you, like, don't let her go. You know, just treat her right, and she'll treat you right." And that was like, I to this day, dog, like, I couldn't tell if that was him or not, but I was like 99% sure it was him. You know what I mean? And that's like the first encounter I had with him. And then the other time that I actually had some sort of contact with him was when we had a call with him, and he was just kind of explaining to us his history a little bit, and you know, just general shit. I think it was that time that I created that video.
No, and he was very. I remember he was very fond of it, and you know, respected the product that you put out, you know, on YouTube. And he said, "Yeah, let's talk up. There's a couple things that I, you know, just want to make sure that hits the nail on the head with it." And it was a good conversation, man. We all learned something that day.
It really was, dog, and I'm glad I got to hear his side of the story on some of the shit that unfolded and unfurled. You know, with regards to other rappers and you know, the influence he had and the impact he had in somewhat like launching their careers and shit. So that's what we want to talk about today, man. It's just like the impact he had on the rap scene, dog, because this fool has had, have you counted how many CDs or albums he put out?
I want to say between 20 to 25 maybe solo albums, maybe.
And like 40
and
compilations
plus,
or some shit, right?
Who knows? And then plus compilations. You know,
yeah, so he was a busy guy, man.
Let's talk a little bit about some of your discography. You got quite a catalog, almost 30 albums?
Something like that. On my own. That doesn't include all the compilations that I put out, about another 40 comps that include different artists and stuff like that.
And I mean, did he ever talk to you about like the beginning of his career? Because I know he's had a few interviews where he's detailed it. And before I start summarizing all that shit, I wanted to know if like he told you any stories of how he came up and things that we can share with our listeners.
Well, you know, when I was growing up and I got to know him, you know, it was more about, you know, hearing neighborhood stories or what he was up to, or we would actually, you know, listen to a couple of albums together.
Nice.
So I never got to really ask him about exactly how his career formed. You know, I have an idea from conversations and from interviews.
Let's talk about like his come up, because I think it's really interesting, and this is something that really separates Chicano rap from like the other subgenres of hip hop, because right, so for our listeners from, you know, different parts of the world that may not understand what the hell we're talking about when we talk about neighborhood raps, this is basically like roll calls and gang banging against rival gangs from different neighborhoods, surrounding neighborhoods, or sometimes, you know, other gangs from across town. And this is something that's really interesting because Knightowl not the first one to mention this one. You know, Little One mentioned that was his come up too, right? That's how he would go around to different parties that the homies were throwing, and you know, his first introduction to rapping was doing these neighborhood raps for the hood. And
Sherman raps and the Waptown raps.
When I first started, I was about 13, and I used to start trying to write my own rhymes and stuff like that. And, you know, I was just learning, you know what I mean? I was experimenting. I used to do a bunch of little raps at the house on cassette and stuff like that. And
what happened after high school for you?
I was doing like neighborhood raps, roll calls, and we would battle other rappers from other barrios and stuff like that. Shortly after that, I met a DJ named Rick, and I started recording on a 4-track, and I started doing songs for the neighborhood, doing roll calls for the hood, mentioning homies and stuff like that.
Around what years would you say you started these 4-track demos?
In 89.
Okay, in 89, okay.
Yeah.
And were you producing these yourself?
No, the first producer that I had was a guy named King Sandman.
Okay.
He's still a good friend of mine, you know.
Okay.
That was my first producer. And he helped me out, you know, and we got the little demo going. And that's basically how I started, you know, doing neighborhood raps, banging on other hoods.
That was your inspiration to
basically
want to put your hood on the map?
Basically, that's what it was, yeah.
Was this all original music or were these samples?
Half and half.
Okay.
Half and half.
Okay. Were any of those songs Here Comes the Night Owl?
No, Here Comes the Night Owl came about in maybe 91.
Okay.
In 91.
We'll get to that.
You know, but one thing that I do know that he's told me before, and which is not out there it's not out there in any interview, but I don't know why he's never mentioned it. In that song, Here Comes the Night Owl, you know, he just credits for just sampling, you know, the swing beat, you know, the Tony Allen's Night Owl.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he always told me that he also sampled in there, You Cheated by the Shields, and that if you listen to it closely, you'll actually get to hear it. So that's one thing that he told me on the one-on-one that he's never mentioned before.
This is where I want to start. I want to correct the reports going around that he started rapping and recording in 1993. If you do any little bit of research, you'll see that his first year rhyming on wax was Here Comes the Night Owl from 1991. And his first release was on Familia Records, single from 1992 titled A Tribute to Mary Wells, with the B-side titled You Can't Fuck With the Night Owl. When he started recording those neighborhood raps, he started doing the 4 tracks where he was doing those roll calls and, you know, basically game banging on other hoods. He mentions his first DJ was DJ Ricky Rick.
Yeah, I heard that.
Did you ever get a chance to meet him or find out who that is?
No, I did not.
I wonder if that dude's still around, but you know, that was the DJ that was basically cutting up the 4 tracks for him. And according to Knightowl on several interviews, he says that after doing these raps, do you know who Vince was up in Norwalk Records?
No. All I remember him hearing that is his first producer, Sandman, that he has unreleased material from him.
Oh shit.
So that I do know, his first producer.
Yeah, so somehow he clicked up with Vince, who told him that, you know, there was a teacher out in Compton who turned out to be Murray Brumfield. And per that interview with Knightowl, he says that he showed Murray the 4 tracks, the demos that, you know, he was shopping around, and you know, within a few weeks, they got started on the debut album, The Knightowl, which is crazy, right? Because, you know, these are unpolished tracks, but somehow like the talent is there, right? Like this is what I will give Murray Brumfield credit for is being a visionary and being an entrepreneur, right? Having a good ear for talent. So, you know, without getting too deep into this, because I really want to do an episode specifically on this album, but from what we know, this is where he started recording those 2 tracks that we mentioned earlier, right? A Tribute to Mary Wells
and You Can't Fuck With the Night Owl.
You go down to Norwalk Records. Is that where you meet him?
No, I met Vince there,
okay.
And Vince gave me his number, and then we met up at a studio.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did that meeting go? Did you play the demos there?
Yeah, I did, and right away he took me to the studio. He's like, "Hey, let's get busy. Let's start recording."
Okay.
So right away, within like 2 weeks.
Yeah, you know what's up?
Shout out to Murray Brumfield for, you know, believing in some talented homies. I was blessed to meet him one time and texted him, you know, maybe like 4 or 5 times, and I met him once through Knightowl, man. That was a memory I won't forget.
Didn't you also meet what's that other fool's name? Bill Walker? No, not Bill Walker.
Richard Pruse. I met Richard Pruse.
And
I've also met Richard Sneed from
Norwalk.
Yeah, Norwalk B-side Records.
That's cool, dog. Did you catch how many fucking units the debut sold?
Self-titled it The Knightowl.
The Knightowl. How did that do?
Fuck, it did great.
Really?
Yeah, in the streets, probably sold like easy in the streets. Fuck, man, maybe like 400,000 copies.
I don't know if he said that's what it pushed on the street, or street mixed with distribution and what Murray put out, or car show swap meets, but I believe it was rumored he said between 300,000 to 400,000 in between that field, in between that range.
That's fucking crazy, bro.
Yeah, that's definitely gonna have you. Like I said, that's the project that Knightowl is remembered by. That's people are gonna name you songs off that album. And plus
The fact that sold that much without any radio play, like that's something we got to keep in mind of how successful this thing is even without support from the mainstream. This is the shit that trips me out,
But reality steps in, radio doesn't show the brown love. Come throw them hands up when they bump me at a club.
I'm glad he went with also the name Knightowl over Ray Rap C.
Ray Rap C.
When I first started rapping, I was like, say, 13, 14, and I wasn't Knightowl, the rapper. I was Ray Rap C.
Really?
Yeah,
Ray Rap C.
Ray Rap C.
Hey, dog. When we were doing the episode for Shadow, and we were like, man, can you imagine a guy named Mr. Prieto? Like, how far would someone go with that name? You know what I mean?
No one would give his music a chance.
Imagine like Knightowl keeping Ray Rap C. Like, I don't know, man. I can't see that going that far, But Knightowl, that I think there's some common ground with different neighborhoods, because there's a Knightowl in every hood. So, but in that first album, I do want to give credit to Knightowl, circling back to that song, Here Comes the Knightowl, because that is such an interesting way of rhyming, dude. Because you mentioned it, Little One took that style too. But remember, I showed you that there's some guy out in Chicago that did a recent song a couple years back, and
Almighty Blessing.
Yes,
I remember that combo.
Yeah, that's a trip, right? Like the fact that this is still a style that's done, and you just gotta pay attention to realize that it's Knightowl style that people are fucking biting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What's real interesting is because, like I said, I believe that young man rapped to Paul Anka's "Head on Your Shoulder," and what's pretty crazy is that from there I listened to a couple of his songs, and he raps like he has the ability to rap. Not the best thing I've ever heard, but he can say that he raps.
Yeah.
So, and it was crazy. You hear him literally can rap to a rap beat, no problem. But then you completely see the change in how he rapped when he rapped to that oldie beat. It was like not like he struggled, but like he had to work on it. That it was like hard to format into rapping into an oldie. And then I compared to, like I said, it's what Knightowl said. It took him like 2 months to rap to that.
I remember when I got that beat, it was really hard to rap to because it was a swing beat. And I'm like, damn, how am I going to do this? And it took me like 2 months
really
to figure out the rap style.
And he basically, like I said, it's almost like he took over the beat and he flipped it. And at first it was a song that it was really, when I first even heard that song, I've never actually really liked the oldie rap songs. It took me a while to really appreciate them, and then I only grew up to like them because I was already listening to their normal rap stuff.
Yeah,
but that song, like I said, now I look at that song, it's genius.
It really is.
And like I said, because of Knightowl, he basically, I call SD the birthplace of Chicano rap, and that whole style pretty much, he was the seed, or he was the main root that just started off the whole tree. And if it wasn't for him, we probably would have never gotten, what the oldie that Little One's known for. They call him, they call him Little One. They call him Mr. Little One by the Orlans, Mr. 21.
So the 5-0 will never know. Then I'm gonna meet him and I'm gonna defeat him. Ain't no one to lead him, and where my freedom still like. Gotta be the man that wise when I'm in the minds, friends full of lies.
And that's another thing too, right? Like, I think Knightowl mentioned it a few times that when it's crazy that he was talking like this, but he says like, when I'm gone, I want people to remember me as someone that helped other people, you know, that opened doors and shit.
I've always helped a lot of people. I've been a good dude. When I'm not here, I want to be remembered as somebody that helped and did something for my gente.
And you think about like, you know, putting Little One in a position where he gets introduced to Madman. You know, I think he was doing something for the tribe and Madman too, right? Like the way that he got them connected.
I ran into Knightowl a few times.
Okay.
And I already knew that he was like in the game, like doing his thing. He had albums out. So he actually took me to the first studio where I recorded an actual song. Like we used to drive to Riverside, you know, and record. And that was like the first time that I actually went in a studio and recorded, like, you know, in a studio.
Right, and you were a teenager at this time, correct?
I was, no, when I went with Knight, I was about 18.
Okay, and now you did your album.
Yeah.
Who produced that album as far as music beats?
Madman, the same dude that did Knightowl's first album.
Okay.
Brown from GPA and Brown, like they were connected because the same thing, you know, like I think in that conversation we had with Knightowl, he mentioned how Brown grew up in his neighborhood, you know, and if I'm not mistaken, Brown just posted a little while ago that Knightowl was actually the first person that befriended him and shit, and you know, he ended up becoming the guy that did a lot of the artwork for his album covers. And, you know, we can keep going on and on about, like, the different people that Knightowl got connected with the industry and shit. And if I'm not mistaken, even DJ Mike Ski was DJing for Knightowl at some point, you know?
Yeah,
so
I believe he was going to be the producer for the Hollow Point if the deal that Ruthless with Easy and Heller went through.
Another question I had for you was Eazy-E. He was giving you a chance. What's the backstory behind meeting Eazy-E?
That's a trip, man. I remember that it was a holiday, and I called Ruthless Records. I introduced myself on the answering machine. I told him who I was, and I played a song for him on the answering machine. It was a song called The Hollow Point. And then I called back again, and I left another song, and that one was Finger on the Trigger. So I called up there. And Jerry answers the phone.
He actually answered the phone, or
he answered the phone, yeah. And I'm like, "Yo, what's up, Jerry? How you doing?" And he's like, "Who's this?" I said, "This is Knightowl." He goes, "Knightowl, motherfucker." He goes, "You left Hollow Point on my answering machine."
He remembered.
I said, "Yeah. What's up?" He goes, "Man," he goes, "me and Easy been bugging off that shit. We fucking love it." He goes, "You guys need to come out here." He goes, I want to talk to you guys. I had did those songs with Mr. Little One. So I told him I got us a meeting with Easy. And at the time we had a DJ named Mike Ski. By the way, you know, shouts out to my boy Mike Ski and his brothers, the Legion of Doom. They're legends out here in the SD game. And we met with Easy and Jerry and all that. And they loved what we were doing, you know. So we get into the studio. They want to do an album with us. They wanted to get like a certain amount of Latinos or Mexicans on the label. Easy was cool with that.
That was before they were calling it Chicano rap.
Before they were calling it Chicano rap, exactly. So Easy was trying to, you know, help us out. You know, he already had Brownside, Toker and Danger, and them were over at Ruthless already. In Frost.
Rest in peace, Toker.
Yeah, rest in peace, Toker. And Frost was over there. So we were the next to come out. We were supposed to do an album, and we were going to come out right after Bone. And we were in the studio at The Edge with Mark Palladino. So I'm the one that came up with the idea of naming the album Pet Cemetery, since, you know, they had Snoop Dogg and the Dog Pound and all them, you know, and we was letting everybody have it, you know. And unfortunately, at that time, you know, he passed away, rest in peace, Easy. And that song was never released. and we didn't get to finish up the album because Easy passed away.
We became a group, Hollow Point, and we were recording songs at the time, and that's when Eazy-E was blowing up with Bone Thugs and Harmony. And on a drunk night, I called that number on the phone, and I left like 20 messages. Fucking Jerry Heller calls me the next day. I tell Knightowl, we fucking go to Ruthless Records. We meet Eazy, we meet Jerry. He sends us to Mark Palladino in Inglewood. We're recording at Mark Palladino. Eazy dies.
Okay, and about how many songs did you guys do there?
We probably had like 7 or 8 songs.
Speak on a song called Pet Cemetery.
Pet Cemetery, yeah, that was for the Dog Pound.
Right.
And we were like, okay, we're gonna do Pet Cemetery and bury Snoop and back up Easy, right? I wouldn't say the song was that great. It was a little corny, you know what I'm saying? But we did that song,
right?
And I said, tell me where the mutts at, some shit. But we did that song, and it was there, and it was gonna they were gonna release that song.
So on that tape, like that they played for Eazy-E, dog, like trip out how they even reached out, because it's not like they're just bullshitting, you know what I mean? Like there is photographic evidence of them meeting Eazy, chopping it up with fucking Jerry Heller. I believe there's a photo of Knightowl, DJ Mike Ski, Little One, and Eazy-E, and then there's another photo of Little One and fucking Jerry Heller together. And like, can you imagine how different things would have been if they actually made music that was released on Ruthless?
If things lined up in another path, like I said, they said they were going to come out after Brownside, and this was even before Chicano rap label even existed. So, if Eazy wouldn't have died, who knows how the shift would have happened? Maybe the term Chicano rap would have never existed.
I trip out, like you can chalk this up as another accomplishment in Knightowl's bucket, right? So not only did I've said this before, that Knightowl album is the beginning of Chicano rap, and whoever wants to contend this with me, please bring it on. Like I'm more than happy to discuss this with you. But as I've stated before, like that is what sealed the genre. That's what defined the movement. Obviously there was other rappers before Knightowl and other albums that got released before his, but all of that shit was like in a different category. That was like trying to do the Latin rap shit, trying to do like the mainstream raps, and then you had this fucking album that dropped, and it shifted the direction of how homeboys were gonna come up and start rapping, because Knightowl said it too, like, I'm gang banging on the mic. I'm not doing that, Scooby-Doo WAP bullshit. Like I'm over here like gang banging and shit. And to me, this is like the shit that defined the genre, you know what I mean? Like everything after this was titled Chicano rap, and everything before it got retrofitted into that title. But just knowing that he created this style of rapping, right? Rapping to that swing beat, the way that he's flipping it, even Tony A has given him credit as saying like this is like some Bone Thugs shit before Bone Thugs is doing it. And then establishing the genre, kicking it off for San Diego like this. Obviously there's other rappers in San Diego that were making music, but to be buzzing that much and create that much of a fucking impact, and then to go on with another local San Diego rapper and just almost be signed by Ruthless just from a fucking voicemail that they left drunk rapping to their fucking songs. Like, that's fucking crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is crazy.
Fuck, man. Like, there's a lot of things that as a fan, I look back and I'm like, fuck, man. Like, that whole fallout with him and Madman, like, that affected everything. You know what I mean? Because then that turned Knightowl, Little One, GPA, and everybody from like keeping that connection going with Madman. And as a result, when that fallout happened, that's when Knightowl went over to Greenside Records, right? That's how we met Tone Mendoza from Greenside.
I met a label named Greenside with some guy named Tone Mendoza from
sounds very familiar.
I guess he was from like the Oakland area.
I was gonna say the Bay Area.
Yeah,
yes.
he was from up there, and he wanted to put out my second album, so they gave me a little bit of money, and we're working on the album. And Tone was a hustler. He was making money, you know, the illegal way. He got busted, got locked up, so that label just disappeared.
Yeah, it's a trip though, and that album, like, so I'm trying to like piece together a fucking time frame or a timeline. So this shit that he did with Little One was like, let's just say between 93 and 95.
From there, I believe that night I went to Greenside, right? It was like a Northern Cali label, and I believe the owner of the label was Tone Mendoza. And like I said, they worked on the second album, and I believe that for whatever happened, you know, the record label went under, and well, like I said, they had to. Knightowl couldn't distribute his album through that
Greenside.
record label anymore. Yeah, he went back to Murray.
So I basically took the album back and I released it through Murray. Again, I went back to Murray Brumfield. He gave me like 25 grand or something, put it out. And after that, I mean, that one did real well también, you know what I mean?
Okay, that was your second one then.
My second one.
What was the name of that one?
The Wicked West.
The Wicked West.
Yeah.
Those are dope names, man.
Yeah.
So you actually gave me the tape, and that tape from the Wicked West is actually released on Greenside. Not sure if you realize that.
Yeah, it was released on Greenside, and then there's some copies that are released through Familia.
Yeah, so I'm looking at I have the CD, which is, I guess this was reprinted on Sawed Off Records.
Yeah, and then the last, when you went independent, and the rest until now are printed on Sawed.
Yeah.
Maybe there might be a couple of AME copies, but probably not, but the rest should be printed on Sawed Off. Sawed off till the wheels fall off.
This one, dog, like, I really like this album. It's number one, the cover art is designed by Brown from that group Brown and GPA. But dog, like, this fucking album is probably one of my favorite Knightowl albums, just because of the production, the direction it was heading. This shit sounds so mainstream that it's crazy.
I agree. I love the album cover. I would have worn it on a shirt. I love this album cover that much, man. It's really unique. You know, it has Western style, the cowboy, and it also has like a Mexican cowboy chapel in there.
See, and what I like about this is that it was like the first album he put out that actually started featuring motherfuckers, you know?
Yeah, let's see. It had a Frost, Goldsman,
it had Frost,
Dresta, Lacey Loke,
Bulky
Big
Loke,
Psych,
Big Psych, yep.
So yeah, that's definitely it was definitely, like I said, Wicked West definitely turned into, like I said, signs of progress in the rap thing for Knightowl, you know.
Yeah, and it also turned, like, so the way that he describes it on his fucking, the way that he describes it on his interviews is like each album that he put out was basically with a different producer, right? So that first one was with Sandman and Madman, right?
Right.
And then when he started doing this one here, this one was, I think he tried to go to, what's his name? D Black. And D Black was like, what's your budget? And he goes, I don't got a budget, man. Let's just make music and then we'll figure it out from there. And he's like, nah. He's like, but I know who can help you. And that's where we cross paths with
CG.
Gun.
Drop
CG.
that beat, homie.
After that, I ran into Chris Gunn. Chris Gunn became my main producer. And the way I met him was I got at some dude named D Black that I met through Cosme. Cosme used to stay with D Black, and he was a producer. So when I went to him, at that time I didn't have no money. So I asked him, I said, hey, homie, can you hook me up and do a couple of beats for me, you know, and maybe help me out a little bit, you know, and I want to record and shit. And he's like, well, what kind of money you got? What kind of budget you got? I said, zero. I said, I got no budget. You
He
know?
hit you with that line. What's your budget?
Yeah, what's your budget, motherfucker? I said, 0, boy. I said, I ain't got shit, man. But let's do some music, man. I mean, I got some shit. So he goes, I got somebody that might help you. He shot me to the left, basically, and gave me Chris Gunn.
Shit, man. Yeah. See, I think that was probably like, and there's, you know, as I mentioned in the other episode on how that came about, you know, the whole issue with D-Lyrical and Chris Gunn having a fucking issue with regards to money and you know, whatnot. And then, you know, Knightowl somehow clicking up with him and figuring out like, hey, you know, let's do some music together. I got your back. And it starts out with these diss tracks. And, you know, that was probably the beginning of a beautiful relationship there.
Agreed. The Wicked West, man, a lot of songs that I like here. Don't Stress, Do It, Knightowl, Do It, Lifestyles of a G.
Yeah.
I Think I Better Warn You, you know, fucking You Did Me Wrong. You know, there's a lot of fucking good songs here.
My favorite song on here is Who Do You Think You're Fucking With? That song, bro. That song set the bar for something else. You know what trips me out is that fucking Murray gave him $25,000 for this shit, dog. Like, can you imagine that? Like this one, I don't know, man. I felt like he could have probably made more money if he sold it himself. Right. If he pressed it.
I want to say mine is What's It All About. But growing up, I used to fuck Lifestyles of a G was on repeat for me, man.
Yeah.
Thug life in this motherfucker.
You know, this is my favorite Knightowl album. Knightowl said that his favorite was Way OG.
Yeah, I believe, yeah, Way OG, and I think I want to say it was
Bald Headed Kingpin too.
Yeah, Bald Headed Kingpin and Jailbird.
No, it was Ghetto Bird. Ghetto Bird is
Ghetto Bird.
Favorite album. Yeah.
Those people that, like I said, they are into listening to only Knightowl's early works. There's a lot of good. There's some hit and miss albums, but a lot of these Knightowl albums, they don't have shitty production. Now in the time, hopefully you guys get to listen to, there's a lot of good stuff on there, man. It's just, maybe the whole album might not be fire, but there's a lot of good songs that he still had. You can see a lot of his versatile styles that he had and some real good production. Like,
because as like I was mentioning earlier, each album has basically a different producer, right? As I mentioned, Madman and Sandman did the first one, Chris Gunn did the second one, and then he talks about I'm not sure in what order it came out, but fucking Shot Caller. What year was that?
Shot Caller. All I know is that's his third album. So I want to say it was 90. It had to be before 2001. That I know for sure. And it was probably before Nightmare, so I'm going to go with 99.
Probably, because that's when...
I want to say Nightmares was released in 2000, and Bald-Headed Kingpin was probably in 2001.
Yeah, because that was produced by fucking
VMF.
Steve Vicious. Yeah, VMF.
VMF is one of the best producers out there, in my eyes. I think it's badass.
Hey, VMF is definitely dope. One of the best. Yes, you're right. He was doing a few things out here. Being from San Diego, I said, I got to work with this dude. He's the shit. So I hooked up with VMF and we did the Shot Caller album. So after that, we started working, and ever since then, we continue to work, and we're still working.
And then another, there's so many things, for example, I Wish I Can Gauge, one time you referred to Kanye bringing in that chipmunk soul. Yeah. Man, there's a song that I heard Knightowl have way back in the day. Maybe it's probably on the, I want to say it's in the Jailbird album. So I got to match up when that album came out. He has a song on there called Yes I'm Ready, and he's sampling Barbara Mason's Yes I'm Ready, but he speeds it up, and he speeds up that song, the sample, and it sounds like a chipmunk. And personally, I always thought Knightowl was genius for that. But like I said, I don't want to say he invented Chipmunk Soul, but I'm gonna do my research later on.
Yeah, that shit's a trip. I mean, there's so many of his albums that are out there, dog, that I still haven't heard everything. You know what I mean? Like, as much as I enjoy Chicano rap and a lot of Knightowl stuff,
there's a lot of stuff out there.
There's just so much, dude. It's overwhelming. Like, I don't even know how the guy had the energy to put out so much fucking material.
Yeah, and you gotta like shop for a producer, studio time. Well, like I said, we're talking about a guy which, you know, I'm not a big fan of El Gran Pelon, but, you know, he pushed that out, I would believe, in a week with Tony G.
Oh, that's another thing too, dog. Yeah.
To get the, what is it, the 50 racks?
The Benz? Yeah, to get the Benz from Bill Walker.
That's a pretty interesting story, man. Like I said, you know, there's someone that, like, not many rappers have that kind of story. You know, that's what makes it interesting, that people just think only selling out the trunk independently and only being signed to a record label, that was the only way of success there. Like I said, Chicano rap, you know, brought a lot of different, like I said, probably there's a lot of ways into the game that people don't know about because of Chicano rap.
You know what's a trip, dude, is like, did Knightowl ever get signed to his uncle's label, Beyond Entertainment, the one that Shadow was on?
Nah, I think the only thing that he's probably ever done is he's probably borrowed some songs from his albums and put them out on his compilations. But I don't think I've never once heard Knightowl like rep out
Beyond,
you know, Beyond Entertainment.
Now all you motherfuckers know it's Beyond Entertainment. Put motherfuckers down in the pavement.
You know what's crazy is that, and I'm glad I found this fucking compilation before he passed. The Best of the Knightowl, the one that's released.
Man, yeah, I got that on tape. Knightowl. I was lucky that Knightowl blessed me with that, but I have not been able to find that on CD, and if I had, it was out of my range, man. I was definitely jealous when you got it, man. Yes, come for you.
It is, you know, I regret not buying it the first time I saw it because it probably would have cost me a third of what I paid for it.
Oh, that's why you said that. That's that right there for a little while. I know that was released on Familia, Sara, and Beyond.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why you asked that. Okay.
Yeah, so this shit, dog, I've been playing this like for the last, 3 weeks. It's been in my car. I'm just fucking playing it just because this was released like in 99 or 2000. You know, this was a time that fucking ¿cómo se llama? Yeah, 2002. So this is when what's his face? Hitman was still trying to cash in on everybody, you know what I mean? And I think up until this point, like, Knightowl had enough material that like you can be like, yeah, like he can do a greatest hits compilation. But just looking off the fucking the track list here, man. Here comes the Knightowl. Turn Off Your Lights. Do It, Knightowl, Do It. And this song has fucking grown on me. Kill Me a Witness, bro.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a song where it kind of starts off like it's kind of like an accordion, but not really. Dun, 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 dun. Knighttow's ready to go.
Every day, Knighttow's ready to bang. I gotta kill me a witness.
But that Led Zeppelin fucking sample is what really gets me, man. Reggie, aka Madman, really did a good job with that shit.
Man, Madman, like I said, one day we're gonna have to do an episode on him.
Definitely. I don't know, man. Like, out of all the albums that Knightowl has put out, which one do you fuck with the most?
Oh man, I wish I can. Yeah, if I can split it up, you know, the most there would have to be 4 or 5 albums, but it would be, of course, his first one.
Mm-hmm.
The Wicked West is definitely mandatory. I mean, I have an OG copy of that. Nightmares.
Yeah.
Bald-Headed Kingpin. And if I were to say his really underrated works that are a little bit later down the line, I like Jailbird, but if it's one of his underrated works that if you haven't listened to, I hope you listen to it. Was The Return of the Kingpin. That's a good album.
Return of the Kingpin.
Yeah. And outside of that, like I said, there's a bunch of compilations. Like another thing that Knightowl did that I thought was impressive, and a lot of people don't know about, was like the fact that he was able to even release. He has like 5-6 compilations alone that are not titled greatest hits, but it's basically a greatest hits. And I know you own this one. It was the Chronicles of Knightowl.
Yes.
The fact that he was locked up, and Mr. D approached them and said, "Hey, you know what? I can I borrow, make like a greatest hits, and basically, this will help me, and I'm gonna help you." And that one came out while he was inside locked up, and he was able to make a profit just off his catalog alone, just recycling another greatest hits album.
That one, the fact that it included those 2 songs, the bonus tracks that were actually from the fucking finger on the trigger tape that he did with Hollow Point.
Yeah.
Dog, those, I listened to those and fucking Knightowl like rips it up. But Little One, dude, he sounds so different. It's a fucking trip.
There was No Mercy and Putting Them All in the Pantheon.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have risked me. Better stay away when you see me approaching. I'm living by the knife, by the lives I'm disposing.
You will never deal with the criminal mind of an assassin rolling. It's the motherfucker Knightowl controlling.
Now I'm in the barrio, ando entre la bola, pulling up a fat one, the victim I'm a cat one, enemy step to me, then I'm a cat one.
Yeah, that was some good shit.
There was No Mercy and Putting Them All in the Pantheon.
Yeah.
Wow, man.
Yeah, because I mean, out of everything that he's done here, I can see why "In Love with a Gangster" is probably like one of the most well-known songs by him and most popular songs. Because anytime you dedicate a song to a high note, like it's more often than not, it's going to be one of those songs that never gets old.
I mean, he was able to make I guess you can say, a manly love song. A manly rap love song.
Yeah.
That song was definitely different for its time, and it's definitely one of his more, well-known songs. It's just, it's still, stamped that, like that song with the sample and notations. It still made him, that song cemented, to keep him relevant, Also, man, dude, like I know one thing that Al always said to me is he hasn't. Oh, it sucks. He has all this unreleased material, but he said he has the rights. That Big Psych, rest in peace, gave him the rights to I think it's, well, I don't know if however he got it, but he has a song with Tupac and Big Psych, unreleased song, that he was gonna put a verse on it, or did, but now who knows what's gonna happen.
Why was that never released?
I have no idea. I'm guessing it was maybe he had a plan for some kind of retirement, possibly, maybe banking in on that song, but I don't know why he was, or maybe it was he didn't know how to maybe release that for one project. Maybe wanted it for a compilation. I have no idea, man. That's a good question.
That's another thing too, is like he knew Johnny J back in like '96.
Yeah.
Like,
rest in peace.
Rest in peace to Johnny J too, dog. Like, rest in peace to Big Psych. Rest in peace to Eazy-E. Rest in peace to Tupac. Everybody that we've mentioned right now, like so many people are deceased. And you mentioned that they were gonna get dropped. Their album was gonna get dropped before or after Brown Side. So rest in peace to Toker and Danger. Like, dog, so many people have died, and fucking trip.
And also, like, if anyone that's ever, because Knightowl has so many albums, some people haven't heard all of his works, but just the fact that Knightowl was no slouch in the rap game. He was definitely a successful underground artist. He had money, even though some of them showed him love. But I mean, we're talking about Daz, cocaine, Dresta, RBX,
Sugar
Big
Free.
Psych, Sugar Free, Sick Jacking, Jail Felony, plus, you know, the Chicano rappers that, you know, that obviously that we know are good. You know, it's the guy, you know, he had an accomplished rap career.
He did. You know what's crazy that I found out is that he never charged anybody for a feature.
Yeah.
That's a trip, right? Like, you got these whack motherfuckers that are talking about like, oh, I'm gonna be doing features for $3,000, and you're like, who the fuck are you? Number one, and why the fuck are you posting this on Instagram? Like, who the fuck cares? You know?
Right.
I'm like, who the fuck are these nobodies charging $3,000 for a verse? And I'm like, I've never heard anybody listen to this guy's music. I mean, let alone I wouldn't be able to recognize it, but still, like, I'm looking at like, okay, who the fuck is this person? Like, what have they done, and why are they charging so much for a verse? Like, this is wild.
And also, man, although, like I said, you know, they might have not had as bigger success than Knightowl, but he's definitely made you know, he's even put out some artists that were able to, you know, cement their legacy into the Chicano rap game or rap period. You know, you know, look, I seldom seen now. You know, he's out there fucking rapping with Crooked Eye. You know, he put him out. He put Cosme out. You know, a talent that, you know, still doesn't get his recognition, but, you know, Rabato's talented. And, you know, you guys and Slush the Villain, you know, he put them out. You know, they've done their contributions to rap, you know, to the fact that they, you know, they have their own, you know, fan bases, cult classic fan bases, whatever you want to call it.
You know what's a trip too is I almost feel like people get in their own way. And Knightowl, like, we know his music because of how much of an impact he's made and the contributions he's done and the people he's put on, and, you know, just overall, like, he was a talented rapper, but he got in his own way in terms of how far his music would go. And I remember in an interview, and he's not the only person that has said this shit, but like Little Rob that said it too. Like, Little Rob is like, I don't like flying, I don't like traveling. Like, you know, if it's too far, I don't want to go. And Knightowl has said it too. He's like, the bird don't fly. You know, like,
the bird don't fly.
Where has your career taken you traveling?
Due to me not flying, there's a limit. You know what I mean? I don't fly. I ain't flown. You know, never have. So I've never.
The Knightowl doesn't fly. What?
Nah, Knightowl don't fly, man.
And it makes you wonder, dog, like, how much more further could their music careers have gone had they wanted to reach the masses that far? You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, Knightowl is like, you know, he did his shows all over the Southwest, but the shows were limited. I think he even went as far as to, I don't know, Iowa or Idaho. So it's like I said, it's the fact that you're right, because they did not like traveling. Because if you're out there over there, you're like, fuck it, I'm gonna go ahead and try to do, you know, tours at these little dive bars or small menus in the South or in the East Coast. You know, but then again, like I said, we were at a time where the style, you know, back then, you know, you had your styles in your areas, you know. So who knows? You know, he already had a rap mind. He was an adult out there, you know, scanning the rap scene. You know, he was always scanning the rap scene. So who knows? But he should have. Like you said, there's limits, or maybe who knows? Maybe, like I said, it was a success down here. The Southwest always worked. It seems like it worked out for him well. But, you know, todos tienen sus razones, pues.
You know, DJ Tricks from Spanish Fly posted something on his Instagram, you know, basically saying rest in peace, Knightowl. But he posted a little story, and it made me wonder, like, this is all pertaining to them traveling and stuff. But he says, I met him in 1992 after doing a concert together up north. A real chill guy who sat in our hotel room number that night with me, Rich Rock, and Ruben Soto, and listened to a lot of my beats. He didn't say much. He was just watching, and I can tell he was loving every minute of it. He left us with hundreds of songs that will continue to be played forever. I've never really heard his music, but I know people loved him. But the fact that like they were, this is one of those things that makes you wonder like how often were they performing back in the 90s? You know what I mean? Like what was Familia Records doing out there for shows and shit?
Right. Like I say, it's at the time, you just had all these. It seems like just a lot of these homies are just excited to just put out a CD, and maybe possibly. Man, the work I'm thinking Maury was just, he was running the whole damn thing. So it was probably just hard to just do everything at that time.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was just an idea that just blew up differently. And then from there, like I said, it had its limits because, no one knew how it was going to develop or how to go forward with it. And that's why we have a lot of, deviations or reroutes of this game, So,
yeah.
Or at least in the Chicano rap game.
For sure, man. Anything else you want to throw in there? Any shout outs you want to give and whatnot?
Well, Knightowl, he gave me some good memories in my past, back in my teen years. Much respect to Knightowl, who, he gave me the time to even hang out with me, even if I was a little mocoso to him. He never played like he was too cool for school. There was at least 3 times that, he's like, yeah, sure. You know what I mean? Bring some of your homies. And, I would bring my homies, 3 or 4 of my homies, and they got to meet him. I've listened to, like 2 or 3 rap albums with him. He would let me, I know, for example, man, I'd be on my bike and I'd be so hella happy, man, even though, like I said, he'd have fools from his neighborhood come visit him and fucking, he'd just be fucking chilling outside. They were shooting the shit, drinking, smoking. I was just happy to be there. He was just a man that, he loved his cars, he loved his music, and, he loved his food. There was a lot of positives to Ray. He was always righteous by me when I was a younger kid. And then, like I said, we had our disconnects for a while, and then I got to run into him as an adult again, and we got to just relive some memories, and we got to hang out and eat at some good places, and shared some memories. Like I'm just glad that he gave me the time to explain just a little about himself. I was listening to some of his voicemails, and I've been bumping his music a lot lately. I mean, I've always been a fan of his music, and that's just pretty much it. I hope that somehow, some way, something. I know there's limited. The music's there, but I know in his story, I hope somehow, some way, like I said, he will find a way to get his recognition somehow, whether it's through a little mini documentary, even if it's a 5-piece video, something. And I just hope he gets his fair recognition, because a lot of people, I believe some people do undermine his contributions. And,
yeah, that's very true, man. Like, our culture is filled with, sometimes there's this hypocrisy where we talk about like being down for La Raza, but at the same time we fucking hate each other so much. You know what I mean? Like it's this weird paradox of how we behave. You know what I mean? But here as the G-Funk Junkies, we want to express our condolences to the family and close friends of Knightowl, aka Ramon, aka Ray, aka C-Rap. What was his name?
Ray Rap C.
Ray Rap C. Here we don't deny the impact, the contributions, and importance of one of the most influential rappers in the underground. Like we always say, the radio, music, television, and the mainstream will never acknowledge our presence, so it's up to us to keep the support and memories alive. So rest in peace to Ramon Knightowl Corona from San Diego. This man defined the genre and was a jumping point for what came to be known as Chicano rap. Everything before that was retrofitted as Chicano rap, and everything else became it by default. Whether you agree or not, his debut defined the subgenre. And with that, we pay our homage and our respects to the man, the myth, the legend.
Knightowl. And condolences to, El Señor Ramon, his father, and his wife, Ray's mother. It's an awful thing to have to bury your son.
It is, man, and I really wish that that we could do more episodes dedicated to people that have passed, because for being such a underprivileged genre, and a lack of coverage exists, but for the small amount of rappers that we think may exist in this genre, there's a lot of them that have come and gone. You know what I mean? And I think each one deserves that respect to be acknowledged for their contributions. I know we've said it for Slow Pain, rest in peace. For me, it's one of my favorite albums. It's the LSD Fully Strapped album. Rest in peace to Joker. Rest in peace to Channel Brown. Rest in peace to Lil V, who was Slow Pain's homie. Joker, his homie. Danger. Fuck, man. I mean, we can keep going on and on with different people that have passed, but we want to pay our homage and say that we appreciate the music that was left behind.
But obviously we couldn't fit all of Knightowl's accomplishments into this 1 hour segment, but here is a quick summary of everything that he's done. He started off with these neighborhood raps that influenced local rappers, dropped hood classics, got to work with Eazy-E and almost joined Ruthless Records, got rappers and producers connected in the game, collaborated with mainstream artists like Big Psych, started his own label, and cemented the genre through his body of work.